Suh Dude.
Hey, what's going on? It's Suh Dudes. My name is Dean, and in the background you're watching some Destiny 2 beta gameplay. I guess this is gonna be Destiny 2 beta week. This is Destiny 2 week on Super Gimp Dean's channel. So hopefully you enjoy that in the background. And what this particular gameplay is, it's either something from the strike or the main mission. And it does kind of pertain to that, what I want to discuss today. So watch the gameplay in the background if you would like to, but I'll admit it's probably nothing special. It's probably nothing you even really want to take a peek at, but it's there as a backdrop. So what I want to discuss today is the frame rate of Destiny 2, which is running at a nice and gross 30 frames a second. Now I've got to say, when I first heard that Destiny 2 was going to be running at 30 frames a second and not 60 frames a second, which is the gold standard anymore, I'm pretty sure that 90% of the games that come out on console anymore run at 60 frames a second. Some of them might dip with huge graphic interfaces that come up or big explosions that happen. They might dip in frame rate a little bit, but for the most part, the goal is to run every game at 60 frames a second. And when I heard that Destiny 2 was going to be running at 30 frames a second, I was very, very disappointed. Of course, the original Destiny ran at 30 FPS, but I was willing to give it a break because it kind of came out like right when the next gen hit, when the PS4, the Xbox One, when all of that released. Destiny came out around the same time, and it also had a release on the previous generation as well. So I actually had the original Destiny on the first Xbox 360. I had it on first, and then I got it for PS4. So I played it a little bit on 360 and it was 30, and Destiny original was on PS4 at 30 frames a second. So I was willing to give them a break because that's where we were at. You know, it was moving generations. Now we get to Destiny 2, and my initial reaction is just like, are you freaking kidding me? I almost canceled my pre-order right away because of that. Now, I'm not a huge stickler for graphics or frames per second. It doesn't bother me that much. But I can say this, going back to discussing the previous generation, I remember one of the reasons I bought a 360 at first over a PS3 was because of the fact that I played a lot of NHL. And NHL on the PS3, I believe it was NHL 09, it was 09 or 10, was only running at 30 frames a second on the PS3. And it was like, even at that time, it was like, really? Like, all the games were starting to push towards 60 frames a second. So it was like, is this really where we're at? Why aren't we upgrading the game for the PS3? So I ended up buying a 360, or ended up getting a 360. I actually got my 360 for my birthday, and later on down the road bought a PS3. But anyways, yeah. So I got the 360 because of that. So like I said, I'm not huge on that. It doesn't really make a big difference, but at the point where we're at now, it's 2017, dude. There's no excuse to be pushing games out at 30 frames a second. So let's get into it. Did it bother me? Did it really, really annoy me as much as I thought it would? When I was playing the mission, the very initial mission of Destiny 2 in the Destiny 2 beta, I was playing through it, and I'll admit, the game is freaking gorgeous. I was looking at the graphics and I was like, wow, this is great. But when I was playing it, I was like, I'm not noticing the frames per second. Subconsciously, I was thinking about it. In the back of my head, I was like, yeah, this is only running at 30 frames a second. Freaking garbage. I was thinking about it, but as I was playing the game, I was enjoying the experience so much that I was not thinking about the frames per second, and it truly didn't bother me. And I was really, really shocked to say this. So just kudos to Bungie, I guess, in that way. But let's get into it a little bit more. When I jumped into PvP, that was when I could really, really, really feel it. And I think that's the big difference. With PvE, or at least with the main missions, they're allowed to create these immersive worlds and make these big explosions and these great fires and graphics and all that stuff. That's the central focus. It's kind of like creating a movie. Our focus is to make things look very good visually. Whereas when you go to PvP, it's very important to have a higher frame rate so that things seem smoother and you're able to get your shots on target. There's a reason that people play CSGO at 240 frames a second if they can. It's because the more frames per second, the better the opportunity you have to land the shot, the more accurate you can be. Maybe that's not the perfect analysis, but there's a reason people play FPS games at high, no pun intended, FPSs. They play first-person shooter games at high frame rates. There's a big reason. So I feel like when we move over to PvP, This is where it's a really big issue. And I know it's not something that's going to change for you PC folk who play the game. I think it'll be uncapped, which is good for you guys. But for me, the biggest issue with the frames per second is if you are playing multiplayer. I mean, I guess it is an all-around multiplayer game. But anyways, yeah, if you're playing PvP, it's going to be a big issue. It's going to be a problem. It's something that I notice. Not as much of an issue in PvE, though. So, yeah, that's kind of my take on it. Is it a big deal? Is it a deal breaker? I think it really depends. Did you play the original Destiny and did it bother you? If either of those are, if you played the original Destiny, yes, and it didn't bother you, no, then I think you'll be okay going forward. But if you're coming from something like Overwatch and never played Destiny before, it's going to be a huge issue and it's going to be really annoying. So that's kind of my take on it. Anyways, I want you guys to talk about this. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like rating. And if not, feel free to give it a dislike and let's talk. And I will see you in the comments below. Peace.